The musician Prince died of an overdose, and that is now the official word. We didn't get much else, though, from the autopsy results that are now public. And the drug that killed him was called fentanyl. It's a pain medicine that is one of the strongest opioids on earth, and one that needs a doctor's careful supervision. This official cause of death opens up a brand new set of questions. Who was that doctor? Was there a doctor? How deeply was Prince addicted? Was he addicted? And who shares responsibility for his death, if anyone, at the young age of 57? Dr. Drew Pinsky is with me now, addiction medicine specialist and host of the HLN show that bears his name. And also Pate is an attorney who currently is representing doctors who are involved in cases regarding the dispensing of fentanyl. Thanks to both of you. Dr. Drew, first to you. This is the strongest of strong. And so typically it's administered in a patch. How does one abuse or adulterate a patch to abuse this kind of drug?
Right. Ashley, you're asking all the right questions, and we're going to be struggling with every single one of them still for months to come. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, when they issue their medical examiner reports, they are incomplete. They're not complete reports. So we do not have the toxicology, but we do have something we can interpret, which is that he had toxic levels, fentanyl toxicity. Okay, and to get to toxic levels of fentanyl, it's a very difficult thing to do using the traditional delivery means you're talking about. It's either a lollipop or a transdermal delivery because it is so powerful. It has to be delivered very slowly through the skin. Well, my patients, when they abuse fentanyl, what they do is they take off the patch, they open it up, and they suck it down to get it through their cheek membrane, or they open it up and they shoot it. So the real weird twist in the Prince story is that fentanyl, in order to get high enough levels into a system, must have really been doing one of those two things. I still believe if we had the complete toxicity, we would see a benzodiazepine involved because 70% of deaths from opiate involve that combination.
That's a great point, and that's where I want to bring Paige in, because Paige, I've got that one-point summary that Dr. Drew was talking about. There's very little information here, but two things that I circled. He was 112 pounds. I mean, they even described him as petite. And that there is only that one fentanyl toxicity that Drew just mentioned as the cause. There's no mention of another drug, but this is incomplete. If there is another drug, can you then, if you're defending a doctor who may have a prescription somewhere in that house, can you say, well, what about the benzodiazepine if there is one? Well, what about the fact that he was only 112 pounds? Can you defend any kind of doctor for how somebody ultimately takes a prescribed medicine?
I mean, that's a great question, Ashley, and that's going to be the focus of this investigation if the fentanyl was in fact prescribed by a doctor. Now, one thing that Dr. Drew said that I do want to add to, there is another way to abuse fentanyl. Fentanyl is not just provided in this long-acting form. There is a short-acting form of fentanyl. It's called turf that you can basically use as a spray or put under your tongue. And I have seen many chronic pain doctors across the country prescribe that short, fast-acting fentanyl to chronic pain patients, whether or not they have cancer. So if Prince had that type of fentanyl available, he could have easily overdosed on that. And then the question, I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
And then the question does become, was that prescription appropriate? Because before you charge a doctor with prescribing a drug unlawfully, the question you have to answer is, was the drug prescribed for a legitimate medical purpose? Now, that's a subjective determination. Doctors will disagree on that. Perhaps Dr. Drew and many others think that fentanyl should never be used for chronic pain patients unless they're suffering from cancer pain.
If we're talking about chronic pain, this does say also that he's got a scar on his left hip, and there's been so much talk of a hip surgery. But to that point, that this drug is so strong, it's typically reserved for the most acute cases like cancer patients, etc. But Dr. Drew, can you just get it on the street? Is it one of those things where you can, if you have the will, you can find it?
You can get that sublingual form out there right now, and it also is frequently cut into heroin. In fact, that's where a lot of heroin overdoses, you'll see them in clusters because the fentanyl is cut into the heroin. But, you know, it's hard to get that much of a sublingual in there. You must have had a massive amount. And again, you can't get that on the street. And yeah, I agree with everything, except, you know, when it comes to the chronic pain patient, many chronic pain patients' pain is worsened and persistent and intensified because of the opiate. And I'm fearful, we see that scar in Prince's hip. I'm fearful that what happened here is he had some sort of surgery. He got on an opiate appropriately, it intensified his pain, and he got in this terrible cycle of more opiate, more pain, and this cycle of pursuit where he ends up on fentanyl. And for me, a young, healthy male on fentanyl is as bizarre as a young, healthy male on propofol.
I appreciate the insight from both of you. Thank you, Dr. Drew. Thank you, Paige Pate. And a reminder, you can tune in to Dr. Drew Monday through Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on HLN. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.